Hello, WCA, Mike Amori here. As promised, I have the update video for you. This session in week one, we talked about how to study the opening on chess.com. Again, it's very hard for me to teach openings broadly because you all play so many different openings, but it is important that you know how to kind of research this stuff on your own. So I'm going to share my screen and it should be set up pretty large for you. Give me one moment. Yeah, I hope you can see the entire screen on chess.com. So just pretend that this is you. So what I would recommend you do, you always go home first. This is a good starting point, and then get used to knowing how to get to your main page from the home page. So for me, I'm on a desktop here. I clicked home, and then I came down to this little graduation cap and slid over to openings. Okay. And I know that you all gave me the different openings that you're trying to improve, but I picked the first one that I saw, which was Leah. So Leah wanted to learn about the open Ruy Lopez. Now she knows the move order, and I think you all know the move order of the openings you want to study. Okay. So once you get into this opening explorer, you can just actually click on the moves or click explore openings, and it'll pretty much do the same thing. And if you click E4, E5, for example, and then pull this dialog down, you're going to see a game here. What the computer is really waiting for is to show you something with a little bit more meat to it. If you just put E4, E5, it's not going to load the full database from this position. But Leah wanted to look at the open Ruy Lopez from the black side. So what I'm going to do is flip the board. And again, she knows what these moves would be. So I come out here, knight F3, knight C6, bishop to B5, A6. This is what she is prepared to play as black. Now, of course, white has choices. White can play the exchange variation, but don't get caught up with all the different sidelines. If there's an opening line that you're stuck with, stick to one until you get a better feel for that opening, okay? So the bishop is retreated, knight to F6, castle, and that allows black to take the e-pawn. Once that e-pawn disappears, white, if they want to play the open Ruy, will play the move D4. So they're going to kind of leave the knight in the middle of the board, and they're going to try to take advantage of the fact that the black king is still in the middle. Black is going to say, hey, look, I grabbed a pawn, and I have some moves here that can kind of support my knight, moves like D5. And if I get my pieces out and you don't get that pawn back, then, you know, I have a pawn. But it's not so easy for black to do that. Leah is not concerned yet, because from this position, she still has an idea of what to do. And you can see the main move here is B5. So you play it. Bishop to B3 is forced by white. And now you see the key move D5. It's move number one. And I really like this move because you support the knight in the center of the board and you open up your light square bishop. In this position, there's two ways for white to get the pawn back. You see the more common way is pawn takes. And now, again, look at the main move. So if this were an opening that you were studying right around move 8, if you're new to this and you see that there are some games here, there's a game list that's loaded. And if I were playing, I would say, well, what's the main move for black? So it's bishop E6. Well, if this is new to me, why? Well, the pawn is hanging, number one, and you see that knight E7 protects the pawn again, but also this move, bishop to E6. Why? Well, bishop E6 keeps the knight centralized, develops the piece, right? There's no law that says you won't castle queenside. I mean, it may not happen a lot in this position, but it certainly is possible. And now it's white's turn. The two main moves, right? Knight B to D2. And there's a game that I'm going to show from the World Championship, I think in the late 70s, between Anatoly Karpov and Viktor Korchnoi, which featured this game. However, I want to look at the move pawn to c3, because I have a feeling if you got to this open Ruy Lopez position, this is the move that you're going to see. I think white likes to preserve this bishop sometimes. So there are two possible moves with the bishop here, and I like this move. Rather than coming after this bishop, I prefer you get the pieces out. Again, so this is Leah. She has a choice of where to put the bishops. She puts bishop to c5, and then again, every now and then scroll down. And sure enough, here's a game where black wins. So why not take a look at it, right? This is a pretty good start. Now look at the name. You see, it says Kano Moya over here against Sergio Gallego. So these are two players. If you memorize those names, what you can do is, what I like to do, is sometimes just click up here in the notation, go right back to move one. And remember those names. Why? Because you can physically move these pieces. And if I can physically find my way to that position where that game was located, now I'm starting to memorize the opening. I hope this makes sense. So here, and castling, inviting the capture of the pawn. Black spends the time to take the pawn, d4, opening the game, as we mentioned, b5, gaining a tempo, kicking the bishop, because you have to be careful now. If this knight ever disappears, that this could be a threat. So they kick the bishop away, so this knight stays on the board. There's that d5 move that we talked about. Pawn takes. And let's say I'm stuck for a second. I sit here and I forget the move. And then I look at the board, and with a little bit of practice, you should see that that pawn is being attacked. Why do I prefer this move over knight to e7? I'd rather see you at your level bringing another piece into the game. c3. Why did I pick c3? Again, I'm trying to also play for my opponent. What is the most probable move that I'll face? I think it's this move c3. You know, it keeps the knights out of d4, and it gives that bishop that nice retreat square. Cool. There's the choice, bishop to c5. Now I'll scroll down. There's the game. Okay? So what I did is I practiced getting to move 9. Click e4. I can do it all again. I won't, because I'll save time. But at any point, I can just click, and there's bishop to c5. Now, I'm going to click on this game. And when you click on the game, you have some really cool options. This is the end of the game. Now, remember, we were looking at this from the black side. I'll turn the board upside down. And because this was a decisive game, meaning no draw, somebody won this game. And it turns out to be us, because remember, we're looking at this from the black side. What I like to do, don't turn on the computer, look at the board, kind of get an idea of the material. Black is up a pawn. It's 4 against 3. Very often, the bishop does a little bit better than the knight when there are pawns on both sides of the board. The problem for white is they have 2 connected passed pawns on the king side, but the black king is well placed to stop them both. And this bishop, unfortunately, doesn't have a free ride to stop this pawn. This pawn looks like it may just come crashing up the board, and it's too slow. It's actually too slow for these pawns to advance. So it looks like black wins here. Now, if you're not sure, look at this little practice versus computer button down here. Whoever was playing white resigned. Well, I don't have to resign. I can give myself a real chess lesson here. Click on practice versus computer. Can I beat this computer from this position? Well, it says that I'm up 4.8 or 5.1. If I start to go and play against this computer, I'm assuming the king came to kind of stop these things, but I don't know. Maybe I get these pawns going. Gonna take that for sure. That gives the king a tempo against my knight. Now what to do? Not sure. I'm wondering if I could even push the pawn and still win. I don't know. Can they take my knight? Yeah, I see that's a mistake. I went to grab the knight, didn't work. Why? Because if I push the pawn, they have bishop there. And now look at the computer evaluation. It actually likes white. So I go back. And again, I don't want to spend too much time here, but look at that computer evaluation, 4.9. So I can't sack the pawn. I need to move the knight. Where and why? You do it. At any point, you can just come, click that computer button, and you're playing. And the cool thing is, what you can't see, is when you play against the computer, it creates a separate tab, meaning all the work you're doing on the other tab, nothing goes away. So I'm just going to close this out. And let's see if I'm still sharing here. Now here we go. And this takes us back to that position that I showed you originally. Now, I want to go to the beginning of this game. There we go. This is what we saw, right? When the computer showed this position. This button here, go back to the first move, and now click Computer Analysis. Once you see this game review pop up, from this mode, not only can you go through the moves of the game, and it's giving me all this feedback here. If you click Analysis, you now have the option of turning all of that stuff off. What I personally like to do is I turn everything off in the evaluation. So I don't see a computer. I don't see any feedback or lines. I go through the game myself. Why? Because if I do it with the computer on, you're going to see my eyes constantly going from the board to the computer, and I'm going to get lazy. I don't want to do that. I want to go through these move by move to the point where I get to the part where we looked for the game, right? You remember that part after bishop e6 and bishop c5? So now I'm just clicking the moves. I have my mouse over this forward arrow, but my eyes are on the board. I'm not thinking here because these moves are already second nature to me. Okay, I understand that. They castle. I'm playing black. I can go for the open Rui. If d4, what am I going to do? Stop yourself. Think. What do I do here? Do I take that pawn? No, that'll open the e. I want to get rid of the pressure on the knight. Pawn to b5. Pawn to b5. Click again. Bishop here. There's that freeing move. Takes. Bishop e6. c3. We talked about why they want to preserve that bishop. Now watch this. Hopefully you can see that this c3 has been lit up. I'm going to right-click c3 and put comment after. And I'm actually going to write, let me just get my keyboard off the bottom. Maybe played to preserve the light squared bishop. I'll just put capital B for bishop. The font might not be so clear for this video, but it does say save the light squared bishop. Click save. And now the analysis that I'm putting into this game has been saved. Awesome. And again, I go through these moves. Now it's up to this point where I have stopped my opening study. Now I want to get a feel for the middle game of what happened here. Here's what I like to do. You can do this any way you like, but what I like to do is put a quick name to almost every move that's played. So listen to my voice. So bishop e3, I see the challenge. And I'm not going to go deep here because the first time through, I'm going to go fast. So I say to I see the challenge and I click and I go, okay, this player made the trade. And I'm going to say why? Why? Double isolated e-pawns. And then I stop. Castle, okay, makes sense. Knight to d2, we are challenged. Do I want them to take this knight? So I'll make a random move. I'll put my rook here. Now you see this move number 12? It added this new line to my analysis. So maybe they would take. So I kind of saw this when I played rook b8. Isn't that kind of funky? Look at these pawns. Look how crazy that is. I don't know that I want to play this position. So when I go back, right, can you see it now? So rook b8 was not the move played in the game. And then you go, well, okay, well, how would you deal with the threat to the knight? Could we play f5? Maybe not. Maybe they'll take en passant and then double the pawns anyway. And then this bishop might even be hanging. I don't know. We have a problem to solve. What do we do? So guess. Then click. He played knight here. There's a tactic now, because if you take the knight, the pawn will take back, hitting a pinned piece. Now this is attacked again. He gets rid of the problem by trading. Notice I'm putting a word to everything. Something. Queen takes on d2. I'm not going to go through the entire game. This video will be too long. But what did I do? I looked at the board. I played a move. I gave it a name. I'll play a couple of more moves because I want to give you an example of what I mean by giving things a name. It looks like he stole a pawn here. Okay, so now you can start seeing how that pawn majority started to develop. It looks like this pawn has to get taken at some point, if my memory serves me right. All right, rook h3. You're playing in a real game. You absolutely, you're guaranteed that that pawn is going to be attacked. Look at the bishop coming to c2, queen up and over. It's almost a given that that pawn will have some pressure, right? Now, if I'm playing this game with white and I'm online in a real game and I don't remember where that queen was, I always take my own king and let go. And it puts it right back. All right, pawn to c6, and sure enough, bishop to c2. There it is. So what would you do? This is such great middle game practice. Do you put the knight on g6? Do you play g6 and weaken the light squares? And you click the button, you go, oh, f5. Interesting. Now the pawn here is going to shield the bishop. Sure enough, look at white swinging the pieces over to the king's side. Knight's attacked, protected by the rook. Oh, nice. Look at that. And you have some lateral defense. Okay, I'm going to stop. One last thing to show you. Quick review. Don't forget, if you right click, I'll write comment after. WCA students are the best, exclaim, click save. And I'm going to do one more thing for you. Don't forget, the second time you go through this, if you think there's something interesting, you can always click lines. And sure enough, you can see that black already has an advantage here. If you go to the end of the game, there's the computer evaluation, 4.57. If you want to play this position against the computer, again, it's the target with the arrow, practice versus computer. But here's what I really like. If you click add to library, I already have a WCA project in my library here. But if you create new collection, what's the new name? I'm going to write WCA students fall 2022. Ooh, did it take in? It didn't take for some reason. I'll put in WCA number. Can you imagine? Who taught me how to spell? Number 2. And then click save. And there is my new library. If I close this, now go back to add to library, WCA number 2, click plus. All of that work that I did is now saved in that collection. I'll show you one of my other projects, but if you open this up, you have all of this work forever. Okay, my friends, a little bit long video. You can always review parts of it, but now you have your own way to not only study the opening, but to also take the middle game and the end game positions much deeper. Okay. Try it with the openings that we talked about. And if you have made any progress, come to class. Let me know how you made out. All right. I have to go get a haircut. Let's go Mets for all you Met fans out there. I'll see you Tuesday and Wednesday. Bye, everybody.